Okay, so as I mentioned in the yes, ma'am. Oh, you're just waiting. As I mentioned in the service this morning, I was talking about the one book where the author was really soft selling grace, and he was more concerned about having a loving atmosphere versus a judgmental atmosphere, and that is true in a way. In churches should have a loving atmosphere, not a judgmental atmosphere, but that doesn't mean that you rule out uh, things like judgmentalism and hyper loving. There's a time for being judgmental, and I'll often have uh, come up about, judge not, lest you be not judged. And I point out later on, it says, yeah, judge with righteous judgment. That judge not is only with reference to Christ following up and saying, don't be a hypocrite. Okay, so make sure that you get things taken care of in your own life and then go at it. Now, there are different kind of, I guess, attitudes that go with that, like um, there is there should be like an effort to be loving with people when we're talking to them socially, as is typical with most things. There is definition A and definition B and definition C. For instance, if somebody were to ask me with regards to religion, what am I? Depends on who's asking me. Okay, if somebody is from as an Aborigine down in Australia, I'd say, well, I'm a Christian. Okay, because that's the level that they're asking. I'm a Christian. And then, but if a Christian asks me, what am I? Then I'll say, well, I'm a Baptist. Okay, because they're asking a different question in reality. They want to know specifically, how do I align myself with others? So I would say I was a Baptist. Now, if somebody is a Baptist asked me, what am I would say I'm an independent fundamental Baptist. Okay. Then if somebody who's an independent fundamentalist were to ask me, I would say that I'm just strictly independent, and I am not part of this camp or that camp. I'm not part of the Sword of the Lord camp. I'm not part of the, and it's not like the word camp is actually used, but just descriptively. There's no such thing as camps. You might have conferences, conventions, and things like that. Those are formal titles. Say I hang out with these other ones, and so that would be a kind of a. Well, in fact, I'll tell you one thing I would say is, as an independent fundamentalist, I'm not of the Steve Anderson camp. Okay, Steve Anderson is wacko and has misapplied the name Independent Baptist Fundamentalist. So, I mean, he's come under some great criticism very lately because a lot of stuff has come out about him. Okay, so it depends on who's asking me. So when we look at whether churches should be loving, or yeah, they should be loving, but we should also have judgment for doctrine, most especially. Okay, we want to make sure we get the doctrine right, because you can mess up doctrinally and you can lead somebody off into something strange. Now, would we be judgmental of certain personalities? Yes, we would, but we want to be perhaps a little bit more careful about it, like Andy Stanley. I don't mind mentioning his name because even though he was Charles Stanley's son, he's gone off in a bunch of things. He has uh, uh, become a gay-friendly church and admitted people into different roles there. Should not be done. This is a sin problem. And then he's made remarks about the Old Testament. And no, we use the Old Testament. The Old Testament is part of God's Bible. It speaks to us just like the New Testament does. So, but we might not, we might try to be a little bit careful and say, well, he does preach a gospel of salvation, but he's going to be loose on his associations, and we're big into separation. Okay, we are going to uh, go out to the world. We're going to speak to the world. We're not going to join in work with the world, though, nor will we join in with, say, a congregation, not officially, we're not going to join in with them, like in some evangelistic outreach or something like that. Does that mean that we don't think that they can get people saved? Sure. We just don't like the way they do it, okay, or the implications that arise out of it. And it's a question of discernment. So there's that. Now we want to be loving, okay. People would not perhaps know how many times we've had homosexuals who have come into the church. We didn't chase them out. We offered the same grace. We offered the same counseling that everybody gets, and they've enjoyed us very much. And they, like many others, have moved on also. And not because we were judgmental, but neither were they going to start teaching in the Sunday school, okay? Because we're going to be loving, but not to that degree in that way. So you have all these influences. Now, as a result, the thing that we should be keeping in mind is that we should be careful. We should be thoughtful. We should act with intellect how we're going to set things up to make sure we don't get false accusations. We only want true accusations. Okay. It's like they say, if somebody accused you of being a Christian, would they have enough evidence to convict you? I said, yeah, they should. Okay, so that's what you want to keep in mind as we go through the church history, is we're looking at especially how did stuff creep in? How did it get to be that way? Uh, there are certain things, like for instance, you've heard no doubt in the Sunday school about a reference to the veneration of images. And they'll say, we don't worship the images. Yeah, but everything you do in terms of veneration is worship. And that's all there is to it. Don't go kissing statues. This is not just an act of veneration. And people don't think in terms of veneration, which again is dumb because the way it's defined, it's worship. Okay. But they don't think in terms of, oh, this is less than worship. That's where they go to immediately, because people are people. Everybody starts off knowing nothing when they're born, and they all have to, it depends on all that they're exposed to. Every generation learns it, and every generation needs to know to repent and needs to know to get back to the Bible. Okay, so that's what you want to try to pick up on in a lot of these lessons here. Okay, so we are up to again of the Thyatira church, going from 450 to 1500 AD, and those are the approximate years. It's like 463 to 1513. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up over here. But anyhow, these are the rough years. We kept them rounded off, and it's the age where the mystery of religions were accommodated. Okay, so you do want to think in terms of the church ages, how time periods of history are split. That goes for whether you're looking at history from a secular point of view or from a religious point of view, and they coincide almost directly, but we might have a few more splits. We might have about 7. People who study secular history do it in about 5. Okay, so those things do mark divisions in how civilization, Western civilization especially, developed. So we're on page 143, and we're going to be looking today at the iconoclasm controversy, which is kind of interesting. We were talking at lunch there a little bit about the Council of Trent, and how the Council of Trent really marked a division where the Catholic Church really formalized a lot of the false teachings. Joe, you would say that too? That's where a lot of things were really formalized. Okay, he says crystallized. He doesn't have a microphone. Crystallized. And okay, so a lot of things were crystallized at that time. Okay, but it's over this course of 1,000 years. Now, keep in mind, you're going from 30 AD to about 450 AD. You squeeze 3 church ages into that, and then you have this, and that's only about what about 320 years? No, 420 years. Now you're going for a 1,000-year stretch. and then things break open. The big concept during the Thyatira age is that this is where um, a universal church is really being developed, and the power of that church. It is a political power, and it's growing in power all the time, and it's going to really defeat itself because it gets so powerful that power, as they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's what we're looking for, is what things got established, and a lot of these things are due to their origin, which is in the Babylonian mystery religions. You're taking paganism. It is paganism that is coming into the Catholic Church, the Universal Church, and they are accommodating it. And this is different. You had a time period where you had uh, the Pontifex Maximus, the seat of Satan, was transferred to the church. And it's at this point that now you're going to have, having taken root, it is now going to grow tentacles and try to kill everything off. Um, this kind of reminds me of something that you might not, be aware of in the Bible, but they had pagan things that were creeping into Israel. It was not until Ahab that you got to where you had um, Baalism as the worship. It was pagan, but Baalism was entrenched in Israel at that time. So before this time, you had certain pagan things, but this is where the true paganism really gets anchored in the church. The previous age allowed for it, and now they're off and running. So we're looking now at the iconoclasm controversy. We already saw how Leo the Great marks the beginning of the age, and it's coinciding with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And then it will be sort of completed with the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire, as you see on the screen there. The Renaissance will help to bring this age to an end. It's it it's not the marking point, it's the end of the Renaissance that brings you to the Reformation. That will mark the beginning of the age. Gregory the Great is sometimes, by some people, thought his reign as Pope um, is where the Thyatira age begins. I like Leo. Okay, we talked about the rise of Islam. We talked about Charles Martel halting the progress of Islam into Europe. We're looking now at the iconoclasm controversy, and that beige line could look white to you there. That marks the time period from the 700s into the 800s, where this was a problem, from 717 AD to 843 AD. So a little over 100 years, this controversy went back and forth. This is where you get it anchored that you have images worshipped in the church. Again, they won't say worshipped, okay? But we'll talk about that in a moment. So an icon, we refer to statues being in church, but icons is the word we want to use. They're referring to a work of art, very often a painting. They resisted having statues, as they say, in the round. In other words, where you have a statue standing on its own, because that was being considered to be some kind of idol worship and idols being made. Why this becomes an issue at all is because you're the universal church is sort of imitating the world. Back in the world, you had statues used for worship for idols that people would use, and they would bow down to them, and they would have these different gods. This was brought into the universal church in the form of taking believers and turning them into saints. And of course, so many people know that you pray to Saint Anthony for what? Lost items, okay? And the other ones that I don't know about, okay? But what it was them saying, well, we had all of our superstitious gods that we would worship. Well, now we're just going to bring it over into the church, and we'll call it we'll call them saints, and they would canonize them. They would say that they are officially in heaven. Okay, so which I always find interesting, because if you Catholic funerals, especially that I've been to in these times, they'll be praying for somebody that they'll be received by God into heaven, and then in the message they'll talk about how they're in heaven already. I'm like, which is it? Okay, are they actually in heaven or not? Well, okay, if if you pray in that person's name and you get a miracle, that's one of the evidences for why the Catholic Church would canonize them and officially recognize them in heaven. In reality, even in Catholicism, they have what they call the communion of saints. And by that they mean all the saints on earth with all the saints in heaven. They recognize this, but they never really call people on earth saints. And this is very easily seen in missals. It's not hidden in any way. But people are so used to having a saint in heaven to pray to superstitiously that they really put them on par with a god, with a pagan god. Okay, so they resisted for quite a while having full statues. So what they also did was they took um, metal castings, stone carvings, embroidered textiles that would be placed in a flat panel. So it wasn't in the full 3D, it was just in three-quarter round, like the sides and the front is what you're getting, but you're not getting the back. So somehow this made it a little bit easier to tolerate. And and they did that in order to maintain a clear distinction between Christian and pagan art. They did this to avoid having a graven image. Um, so again, the full statue was deemed to be too reminiscent of pagan religious practices. So from about 717 AD under Emperor Leo the Great, no, Emperor Leo, different one, different Leo, Leo the Third, he issued an edict prohibiting the veneration of icons. Things were getting a little bit hectic there, well, a little bit too obvious that they were worshiping these. So he said, okay, no veneration of icons. You didn't really have so much statues as much as these icons. And he cited concerns of idolatry, and he had a desire to purify the faith by removing those. So Leo the Third's stance was then maintained by subsequent Byzantine emperors. Whenever you hear the word Byzantine, that's referring to the Eastern Roman Empire as opposed to the Western Roman Empire. Okay, and this lasted this issue of iconoclasm lasted until 787 AD. So iconoclasm means destroyer of icons. So if you hear somebody today talking about a political foe and they are referred to as an iconoclast, typically he's one who's trying to remove some well-established practice that's you know uh, being discredited. So that would be an iconoclast. The hippies thought themselves to be iconoclasts trying to take down the American regime and the American government. So an iconoclast is a destroyer of things that are held to be sacred, or destroyer of icons. And they had opposition from clergy and lay people who regarded the icons as essential to their religious practices. Problem here is with the word essential. Um, we had Miss Nancy, yes. Okay, this was let me see. Yeah, it's at the bottom of page 143, paragraph 367. It has one line that continues on to the next page. What okay. See the footnote number 9 on the word Byzantine on okay, and so that's Eastern Roman Empire. It says Byzantine. The very last line of the page, Leo the Third. Okay, there you go. Okay, yeah, and I do that because nobody really knows very often what Byzantine is referring to. Okay. Byzantium was the name of the city of Constantinople. Constantine um, named Byzantium after himself, Constantinople, the city of Constantine. Later historians referred to this as the Byzantine Age because they were trying to make a distinction. They did not think of themselves as Byzantines, that's my understanding. Okay, so the problem is always in having it be essential. We had a lady who came in, I've told this story before, and she was grandmother of some of the Sunday school kids, and she came in and she thought everything was really nice, and um, but it bothered her that we didn't have any images in the auditorium. So she brought one for me. She brought a picture of Jesus, and I don't think it was from a Polaroid camera though. But anyhow, um, and said she offered us. I said, "Oh, thank you so much. I didn't want to make a fuss. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that." And I said, "Yeah, well, we use that in the Sunday school because we have pictures, teaching aids that we use, but we don't treat them with veneration. They are teaching aids." And I said, "Yeah, we can utilize that in the Sunday school." She said, "Well, why don't you put it in the church?" That's what she wanted me to do. I said, "No, I really wouldn't do that." She asked me why. I said, "Because somebody who is Catholic might think that they were supposed to bow down in front of it, and we're not supposed to do that." She forced my hand. I had to give her the explanation. She is a Catholic, got nice and offended and everything. And I said, "Yeah, we can't do that." So other people have noticed, hey, you don't have any images here. So that's the reason why, because of what people will do with them. It's not bad to have an image. What's bad is to make it essential. In other words, to make it part of your faith, that you've got to respect it as if it is God. And if you disrespect it, then you have a problem. Nancy had in her earlier age there had and I think it was a statue on the dresser. It fell down and broke. How did it take the microphone? How did you feel at the time?
It was a statue of the Sacred Heart. Of course, that was Christ, and many people have seen how he sort of pulls his robe
Yeah.
apart on his chest to reveal his heart that is broken for us. And this was a very revered statue, and I had like a shrine on my dresser, and the dresser had fallen on me, and I was banged up and bruised, and all I could think of was my statue has broken,
Yeah.
and I was just inconsolable. And I even saved the head and put that on my dresser, like, oh, maybe God will. I somehow feared God's wrath because in my carelessness with the dresser falling, I had broken the statue. So maybe I could salvage the head and somehow make amends for that, and put flowers near it. And it's very strange and sad how we attach these notions
Yeah.
to objects.
And
And in
it's
fact,
superstition.
it is. And in fact, today, I mean, in recent years, even, now that we don't have any idols in the church, we don't have any statues, we don't have pictures, and yet we've had people come in and they've said, "Oh, you have candles on
Yeah,
these shelves. That's so Catholic. How could you do that?" I said, these aren't to, you don't put a dime in a box for a special
for
intention or
prayers. Yeah.
prayer. These are just decorations for the seasons.
Yes.
They're like, "Oh no, you can't have candles in church." And I think they've gone so far in the other
Right.
direction that they just they don't want to have even candles in a church for any reason.
Yeah. And we only turn them on really at Christmas Eve.
Yeah, yeah, but
So, and
you
you're not allowed to pray as you do it, by the way. And that's, yeah. Well, they're battery operated. So, oh, you're saying if the battery, yeah. Yeah.
I think you can go overboard in the other direction
Yeah.
just as well and be attaching too much. For that matter, you
Yeah.
can't have them in your home either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people just they really love to tend to extremes, and that is our carnal nature.
Yeah. Carnal nature. Okay. I am now looking at paragraph 368 on page 144. We get to the turning point, and let me click here for the Second Council of Nicaea. The Second Council of Nicaea in 787. It's known as the Seventh Ecumenical Council. They would be named after the cities. Well, this is the seventh one where they brought all the pastors together, and they affirmed the legitimacy of the icon veneration, and they condemned iconoclasm as heretical. So now you know how this stuff gets entrenched in the church. Happened nearly a millennia, okay, a couple of hundred years, nearly a millennia after the church was established, that you have where you have this officially being said that you have to have the veneration. And again, veneration, it really is worship. In fact, that's one of the definitions of veneration is to worship. Okay. Now, following the Second Council of Nicaea, the use of icons was reinstated in the Eastern Orthodox Church. So they brought back the icons and said use them. This era saw the resurgence of iconodules. Okay, and so that's a good word in there. So you had the iconoclasts and the iconodules. Does anybody know what the Greek word in the Bible is for a servant? Doulos, yes. So you had the icon destroyers, and you had the servants of the icons. That should tell us something. Okay, who are you serving? You're serving the icons. The icon. You were an iconodule, and they had a revival of icono, iconography. Yeah, iconography, um, or religious art. And there was a lot of religious art to enjoy at the time. Um, so the controversy resurfaced in the ninth century, um, under Emperor Leo V, leading to another wave of iconoclasm. And it wasn't until the mid ninth century under Patriarch Methodios the first that iconoclastic policies once again were overturned. Um, they promoted iconodualism, eventually leading to the full restoration of icon veneration with the endorsement of both the church and the ruling authorities. And then you can, let me see, at the bottom of paragraph 370 there, says, although the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox churches use the word veneration instead of worship, it seems like a semantic issue that describes the same thing. It's, they need to listen to Rush Limbaugh. Words mean things. Okay, so Exodus 20, verses 3 to 5, we read, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Now that would sound, if you stopped reading there, that would say don't do any artistic work, but includes here in verse 5, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. And that was a Hebrew word, but it runs along with iconodule, servant of the image. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Okay, so we have we have the scriptures in there. You don't want to be too broad. You want to be able to have you want to have a good articulation of what you believe. You want to have your reasons and you want to think about it. So yeah, we are going to have the pictures for Sunday school, but we don't require the kids to cross themselves. Okay, we don't do anything like that. Any questions? Uh, Let me see. Um, I'm going to cover this next section here too. The Holy Roman Empire and Charlemagne. Okay, any questions that anybody has about iconoclasm or any comments or anybody from home? Brother Tone. Like,
There's a more recent sort of revival of a long time controversy. The what they call the Holy Shroud of Turin.
oh yeah, the Shroud of Turin. Yeah, okay.
Would you consider that an icon?
Because of the way it's used, yes. Any of the relics that are brought forward, they would have the same thing. So this would involve then if somebody offers you a little vial with a splinter of the cross for $500, do not buy it. Okay. Shroud of Turin. I think I might have a book. If I still have it, I know that it well, the Shroud of Turin has been disproved. When you take the actual science behind it, you find out there's two sides of the story, and this is not an explosion of energy as Christ is being resurrected in the grave that's leaving a photographic imprint on the shroud because of the ointments and things that had been used. It is far more likely to be a kind of rubbing that they would do um, to make an image on something, um, uh, and that's more like what was being used. It was like a piece of art, if anything. And there's way more to it than that, uh, but it's from what I saw, it was very scientifically debunked.
Yeah, because the our scripture says that Jesus left the he was wound
Yeah, in the grave
in
clothes,
the grave clothes.
and he had a napkin on his
And
face.
he folded
Yes,
the facial cloth.
yeah, and the Shroud of Turin is supposed to be all one cloth.
All yeah, well, it's a human length long.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, so that counts as a problem. There's no there's no end of of superstition. That's what it is. Yeah. Is somebody else I thought had something? Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, did you want to? It's not on. And reaping the whirlwind.
I don't know when it was, but they dug up a skeleton that they said was Jesus because the hands were pierced and the feet were pierced, and the rib was broken where he was stabbed. But Jesus wasn't the only crucifixion.
Yeah.
They crucified people left and right, those Romans. They were bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
So how could you say it was Jesus?
Yeah. There's, let me call on Nancy, but there's a thing about forms I'm going to refer to that can't be repeated. Yes, Nancy.
Yeah, we know that that really couldn't have been Jesus because the Bible said not a bone of his was broken.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that you see in the Bible is that you have um, what's called, here's a good theological term for you, the um, the noumena versus the phenomena. Okay. The noumena is the spirit of something versus the phenomena, that which appears. We have things, or like, for instance, like communion, where we know that it's the spirit that quickens, that the flesh profiteth nothing, and that the words that Christ spoke to us, they were spirit and they were life. They were noumena. Okay, where we get the word pneumatic from, right? Pneumonia. Okay, so you have the phenomena, that which appears. It's kind of like David Lloyd Wright when he would talk about the difference between form and function. Okay, that if that form should follow function, your engineering work, your architectural work, it will be beautiful if it follows the function of physics that you're utilizing, and that would be the form following function. That would be the form would be the phenomena, the noumena would be the function. Okay, you can't repeat things in the Bible physically. You can't repeat the ointment that Aaron was supposed to use. You have enough information given that you can sort of get there somehow, but not really. You can't rebuild the temple because you don't have enough information. Some of the words that are translated, we're not sure exactly what those animals were that provided the skins. And there's different things like that. You can't repeat them. When it comes to the church, there's no form that is given to us. You don't have any liturgy. You don't have any ritual. What you've got is noumena. What you've got is the spirit of thing. And the idea is that God does not want us worshiping the forms. And so there's incomplete information. You got an idea of what was going on and what it meant, but you're not allowed to repeat those things. So when you have statues or when you have anything, uh, we, we don't see anything in the Bible that's anything like that. Okay. Somebody else, anything else? Okay, very good. Let's look at on page 144. We're going to look at the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, so after the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, which was a Roman government, it was not a church state government. The old territories were divided and ruled by various Germanic kingdoms and other regional powers. On, of all things, December 25th in 800, okay, nice round date, 800 AD, and on Christmas Day, Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, received the blessing of the Pope as he was crowned Emperor of the Romans. And this was the most distinct beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. But the term Holy Roman Empire actually grew to be used over time. So this became, it was kind of like for the purpose of power. Remember, this is an age where the Catholic Church, the Universal Church, is establishing power politically as well as spiritually. The Pope says, "Okay, let's set us up an emperor that has been endorsed by the Pope." So down this paragraph from Newman, the historian, the mutual advancements of each his and the Pope's interest. That's Charlemagne's purpose was for the mutual advancement of each his and the Pope's interest. He had become seized with the idea of a Holy Roman Empire working in conjunction with the Holy Catholic Church, each having worldwide dominion, each advancing the interests of the other. So now, as a world power, The Catholic Church, the Pope, back um, back around 300 AD, the Pope was claiming spiritual power. Now we're moving into political power. And so everything's about politics here. So now he's wanting to have political power as well. And both together bringing peace and the blessings of civilization to all mankind. Now, paragraph 372 on page 145, these high ideals never really materialized. If anything, they provided pressure for the investiture controversy, and you'll see that on page 147 if you want to read ahead. And that had to do with who's allowed to name who at the head of institutions. Later, over who had the power, okay, to invest authority in whom, which advanced the power of the papacy further. So the emperors are wanting to name the popes are wanting to name name the emperors. Newman goes on to say the Holy Roman Empire is of interest to the church historian chiefly as the counterpart of the Holy Catholic Church. So this becomes where the government is the agent of the church, from as opposed to the opposite. From the middle of the 11th century until the middle of the 15th century, these two powers that were theoretically the counterpart, the one of the other, were for the most part in mortal combat. The emperors would fight with the popes. Emperors deposed popes and procured the election of others in their place. In other words, to procure the election of other people to take the place of the popes. Popes excommunicated emperors and cooperated with rivals in securing changes of dynasty. Each furnished a sort of check upon the other, and it is probable that this contest prevented the triumph of ecclesiastical absolution on the one hand and of imperial absolution on the other. The Holy Roman Empire did not stop until Napoleon came along. Okay, so that's how long it lasted, and the end of the First Napoleonic War in 1806. Okay. Any questions? Any comments about that? Yes. Microphone for Miss Maria. We'll take Kathy's there. I wish there was an easier way for
Good
turning these
afternoon.
microphones on. Just like a flip of a switch would work. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering about how did the Christmas day came in, December 25th, since we're referring here to 100.
Okay. I don't know when it was originally thought to be that. There's been a lot of questions about that. One of the problems that people have is they'll say, "Oh, well, the shepherds took the flock out to, in their fields at night." Well, they do that in December. Okay. Some people say, "Oh, that had to be in the spring." There's others. I mean, there's tradition that goes along with it. Some people say, "Oh, no, it's to replaced Saturnalia, the Roman procedure," except it's very possible that the Roman government created Saturnalia in order to compete with the church instead of vice versa. What I say is one man honors one day above another, and another man esteems all days alike. I say we should celebrate Christmas every day. Okay, and we should exalt Christ every day. Christmas grew in popularity in the 1800s. The Puritans, they condemned the celebration of Christmas, thinking it was too pagan. Today, when people get drunk for Jesus, I would certainly condemn that. But the whole purpose is to whether you make it December 25th or later on in January, where the Coptic Church worships it. Yeah, well, no, the Catholic Church, Orthodox Church celebrates a different day for the birth of Christ. The Epiphany is when the three kings come along. Yeah, Three Kings Day. Uh, so, uh, so, um, so exactly when it came about, I can't remember when they established it, but I just think it's interesting that this is the day they chose for Charlemagne. Okay, somebody else. Okay, well, fantastic. We shall hold off for the Photian Schism. Uh,
Pastor.
yes, sir.
And remember, some people's iconoclasm could be a real diastrophism.
Okay.
I have here the Christian church in Rome began celebrating Christmas on December 25th in 336, they say CE, during the reign of the first Christian emperor Constantine. However, the origins of the holiday are uncertain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you want to make it a holy day of obligation, now you got a problem. Okay, like in the Catholic Church.
Well, I also was told by someone that was German back in the days that they also worship like the eternity ring on that day due to Viking ancestry.
Yeah, but yeah, people are going to bring in mythologies and superstitions all over the place. Okay. If you opt to have a Christmas tree, I don't like to use a Christmas tree in the church. But if we have a Christmas tree at home, do not pray to the tree. Okay. Yeah. And burn. Yeah, Brother Tone. Oops. I think that's on already.
Don't the ancient historian like Josephus identify the birth of Christ?
I don't recall. I don't recall. Yeah, and I'd have to look that up. Okay. Very good. Then we will look at the Photian Schism. That's a good thing to read about. Has to do with the division between the East and the West. We don't really talk about the Orthodox Church. We don't, which would be the Eastern Church, because we don't have that much experience with it around here. But for for a larger understanding of Christianity, it's good to have an understanding of that. It's going to be it's when you have the um, it's going to be when you have the destruction of the Eastern Empire, Eastern Roman Empire. That's going to mark the next church age going into the Reformation. Yes, Brother Tony.
Yeah, the our Greek our King James was based on a Greek text.
Yes.
Is it something similar or the same as the Orthodox Greek Bible?
It's going to be very close because it's from the Byzantine protection of the Bible that you will have that you'll have the preservation of the scriptures. I'm just thinking, I have an article that I've just written recently. I'll tell you what it is. I'll because it's a very long answer. I'll print that out. I'll make several copies if people would like to have that. It still might be a little bit hard to understand, but we'll give that to people and we'll see how this helps you out. Why we have that Greek text from the Byzantines, it's called the Byzantine text, how it was utilized in the Textus Receptus to give us the King James Version. I think I actually talked about this a couple of Sundays ago, I think. But anyhow, and the modern texts all come from corrupted Greek copies, which is why we don't use the modern versions at all.